So without further ado, let's get started for Tuesday Traces tonight. Happy Tuesday, everyone. Thank you for joining me tonight for Tuesday Traces. I'm going to continue to invite our V1 partners to join me every Tuesday evening on this platform. So if you have a suggestion for an exceptional golf instructor in your area that's using V1 technology and the V1 pressure mat, and you'd like to hear from them on Tuesday Traces, please shoot me an email. Or if there's someone that you'd like to see again, let me know. My email will be posted in the chat, and you'll see the girls who are awesome and support us doing this every Tuesday, put lots of good information over there in the chat window, so keep an eye on that. Tonight, the recording of our webinar will be available on the YouTube channel for V1 Sports. If you're registered, you'll automatically get a copy of the recording via email. But please do subscribe to our YouTube channel. Anna works really hard to get videos posted there, and all of the sessions from our virtual summit are in process and will be posted as soon as she can get them edited. If you didn't know or didn't join us, we had a really successful virtual summit last week. We did 14 sessions with some amazing partners. It's taking about 2 days to edit per session, so they will be there as soon as she can get them done. Send her some good vibes because she's working her butt off. All right, we love answering questions. So we've got a couple places and a new place tonight to receive questions. Thank you, Scott, for already putting some in the new Q&A box for Zoom. We will also be watching Facebook and our chat window for questions. We've got a really great speaker tonight, so don't hesitate to send those through. Okay, speaking of questions specifically about the pressure mat, I leaked a really good piece of information, which is that we have a V1 pressure mat certification. I announced it last week in our virtual summit. We are working on the final touches of that certification process. But if you are interested, please email pressure@v1sports.com and just give us a few days to finalize the process, and we will get the test over to you. Okay, that's all of our housekeeping notes about our company and who we are. V1 Sports is a 25-year-old company and the leader in delivering video analysis and instruction solutions to golfers and golf instructors around the world. In addition to our software solutions, we provide hardware solutions, including high-speed cameras and computers, and the V1 Pressure Mat, the world's most powerful and portable solution to measure pressure, velocity, and dynamic force throughout the golf swing. Our pressure mat integrates seamlessly with V1 Pro Desktop, which you will see Mitch using tonight, and mobile applications to provide immediate data and video feedback. If you don't know and haven't heard me talking about it enough, I am Mandy Von See. I absolutely love my job. I am a Southeast Regional Sales Manager for V1 Sports, based right here in beautiful Charleston, South Carolina, that you can see behind me. We've added to our sales team, and I have got some really great partners in crime. You guys keep an eye out for Chip up in the Northeast, Ryan Burke over in the West, and Jim in the Midwest. So please don't hesitate to let the boys and I know if we can assist with software questions, hardware solutions, or upgrades. And of course, my favorite technology, the V1 Pressure Mat. Okay, enough about us. Let's talk about our guest host tonight. Tonight, I'm super honored to welcome my very first PGA Teacher of the Year and a new Golf Digest Best Young Teacher. Mitchell Moore won Kentucky Teacher of the Year in 2020, and just a few weeks ago won the Golf Digest Best Young Teacher. Mitchell, I'm going to talk about you and your resume, but thank you so much for joining me tonight.
Thank you for having me. I'm honored to be helping you out here.
I'm so grateful. I know you guys teach all day and you've got quite the resume. So let me tell everyone a little bit about you. Mitch played high school and then college golf at Murray State University, where he won the TSU Intercollegiate and graduated with a marketing degree. After a few years playing the mini tours, Mitchell started teaching at the Links at Novadell. Mitch now operates his own teaching academy at the Hopkinsville Golf and Country Club in Kentucky, where he gives over 1,000 lessons per year. I would call Mitch a Kentucky PGA golf legend, and he is only 33 years old. He is a baby. Mitch, congratulations on 2020 Teacher of the Year and Best Young Teacher. And yeah, we're really excited to hear from you tonight. So thanks for being here. And I'm gonna jump right in. So yeah. I'm really looking forward to the next hour or so, because we're not only going to hear how Mitch uses the pressure mat, But for one of the first times, we're really going to see him demonstrate some drills. And for those of you that always love those cool training aids, Mitch is going to show us some really fun homemade training aids. I'm really impressed with one of them. I know multiple people that are tuned in, specifically Jim Alterano, will be in their workshop creating these same training aids. I'm excited to talk about them. I'm talking about your steering wheel, Mitch. Okay, so Mitch, tell us about your golf path. You've had quite the accomplishments in your young 33 years. How did you get here?
Well, I mean, things like this.
Yeah.
Anytime I find education in front of me, I take advantage as much as I can. I mean, every time I went to PGA show, anywhere, I was just soaking it in, trying to be a sponge as much as I could at a young age.
That's good. That's good advice. We heard that a lot last week when we were doing our virtual summit, and it's fun. I mean, I'm a beginner golfer, and I feel like I ask a lot of questions, and I sure have learned a ton from talking to folks like you. You give a ton of in-person lessons. How did COVID affect that last year?
We got fortunate to an extent just because I chose to work outside. So I'm fortunate to have a driving range where I'm located. Obviously with not as much technology, but I did have a bit of a setback because I chose to be, fully outside and tried to take as much as I could, over to the driving range. But it was nice weather, but obviously getting rained out, it did take a bit of a hit, but it didn't take long to get back rolling because, we didn't really understand or know that golf was in the middle of what was going to be the biggest boom maybe it ever had. So once that, was obvious and saw this boom of golf, then the phone started to ring and ring and ring.
I think that's pretty special, and I certainly am grateful to be in the industry that we are in because you're right, there was quite a boom for the sport, but also for juniors, right? So I really am interested, and my team and I, the girls here specifically, we're kind of obsessed with your social media. You guys, if you want to take a cue from a really great instructor on social media, go follow Mitch, because we follow him a lot and he has a ton of juniors that are earning college scholarships. I mean, a ton. How are you getting these kids trained and ready for college? Because it seems like every post is a college scholarship headed off to some cool school.
I've been fortunate enough to have a lot of them at such a young age. And, being a fish in a small pond, being able to have, my hands on kids and helping them at such a young age, I felt like, it helps get a head start on molding them. And especially this year, with COVID, so many sports being shut down, baseball being shut down, schools being out, the amount of hours that kids were able to dedicate to golf, went up tremendously, a silver lining in a bad situation. But it really has to do with having a tight community and kids being loyal to me and me trying to be loyal to the kids and the family as well.
That's awesome. So question, do you put all those kids on the pressure mat?
Not all of them, but I do like to put it on, get them on it early, kind of just see how they use the ground, get an idea of the sports background, just to kind of slowly mold them, but not put them on the railroad tracks of a molded golf swing. I use it just to see how they use the ground, and also learning when you see a golfer that's an athlete at a young age and getting data from that and just learning from how they do it efficiently, not even just as much to change it and trying to make sure I don't mess that up.
Yeah. We were talking about that a little bit in our test, weren't we? That some kids on the mat jump for power and whether that's okay to let them do that or not.
Right.
So that's all an education thing, right? So just real quick, if there's anyone out here that's a parent of a junior or a junior, what's your advice for anyone tuned in that has aspirations to play college golf?
A couple things that right now there's an issue with is early specialization in sports. My generation and generations before me grew up that every season had its sport, and we developed as athletes first, which develops way more than just a golf swing. Our mentality, our ability to adapt, and So, I would encourage parents out there to keep your kids in sports, and baseball does not hurt golf. I can't say if golf hurts baseball, but baseball helps golf. So I encourage Rotary sports. And if you want your kid to grow up playing golf, put them in a Rotary sport, baseball, tennis,
Hockey.
something that they're turning. Hockey's a huge one. I mean, there's so many hockey players that end up, on this long drive circuit. So hockey's huge. So, keep kids active in multiple sports. Early specialization is really taking a toll on kids. So definitely
When you
that.
say early specialization, do you mean they're only focusing on one sport?
Yes, and even golf. Early specialization in our area, it's baseball. We've got baseball and softball where kids are year round, and there's pressures on them to stay with that sport year round, because if they don't, then they get behind in that sport because they're being left behind. But I love the stat of it was Ohio State's national championship. 48 of the 50 players on the roster were recruited as multiple sport athletes. And just because golf doesn't seem to be an athletic sport, doesn't remove the need to be an athlete first at a young age, especially. So, as far as, the athletic development model paints a really good picture of how those fast twitch muscle fibers are developed in that very key age between 8 and 12, and kids are starting to get pulled out of some sports, especially the ones that want to get into golf, and they're slowing their kids down by not developing those fast twitch muscle fibers at a younger age, and wondering why my kid isn't excelling by the time that they're 16. Why can't he hit the ball farther, the golf ball farther? Well, that was a key stage of their life that they missed that window. So that's a huge window to be developing athleticism.
That is a huge point. I mean, I'm actually going to ask the girls to take that quote that you just said and snip it out, because I immediately think I have 12 and 14-year-old boys, and I'm immediately thinking, will either of them ever be professional basketball players? Well, I'm only 5'7", so probably not. However, both of them will have to play golf in some capacity as an adult or a young adult in their career, right? So I really love that that point you just made, and super important to talk about the fact that from 8 to 12 is when we should be developing the golf swing in students, in addition to whatever sport they're playing. And side note, since you mentioned Ohio, and I'm a Clemson grad. Dabo put a golf at the new football facility so that the football players could also learn golf for their future in business. So just a little side note, and I have to put a little plug in there for Clemson since you threw Ohio State in there. Okay. That's just a little college football thing. Okay. So you are super smart, and everybody on here that's watched a trace has heard me say the hashism. The toes are your brakes and the heels are your accelerators. We've said it 100 times. Hash has said it 100 times. The girls have typed that quote in our chat. Now, you challenged me a little bit on that, and I want you to tell our audience what your tweak to that quote would be.
Yeah, so there might be some backlash to this, but there'd probably be some people that agree. But, especially working with juniors that use the ground to generate as much speed as they possibly can, I agree that the toes are the brakes, the heels are the accelerators, but I look at, the toes are the brakes of rotation. The heels are the accelerators of rotation. So your toes are your jumpers, your heels are your turners.
Toes are the jumpers, heels are the turners. Okay. So I think that's interesting to talk about that. And when we get into some traces, I would love to circle back with that, because that is super interesting. And when we think about the thought process of gaining power and using ground force, toes are the rotators. And I think that is really important to talk about. So let's circle back when we're looking at traces on that. Okay. You have some notes on the board behind you. And the first point that you are going to share with us is, I think, the why.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to shut up and I'm going to let you talk about issues in the golf swing and the why to start with.
Well, yeah, anytime somebody comes in for a lesson, you're wanting to start with, what am I trying to accomplish? What am I trying to fix? Why are you here? Assuming this isn't like developing a junior or beginner player that doesn't have patterns yet. So this is somebody that's, we're trying to either correct or improve a pattern. So when looking at it on video or a pressure mat, seeing what the ball's doing, and then trying to work back to the root of the problem, figuring out why. I'd probably say chicken or the egg more than anything. So when I'm looking at pressure, I want to know, is it a cause or is it an effect? Or is it a combination of the two? The big thing I'm looking at first is the club face, or the control of the club face, or how they're delivering that. And then the body is going to react to that. So typical golfer, weak left hand, cup wrist, the face is open. When I'm looking at the pressure trace, I'm looking at, is their trace look like that? Are they using the ground in a certain way as a reaction to the face, as a way to square the face? So what you'll tend to see, make sure the mat's working. All right. So you see I've got the yellow line drawn up on the screen. That's just a typical plane line I see. But what you'll, again, beginner golfer or
you're not,
handicapper.
Hang on, you're not shared. If you want to see those lines, yeah, share your screen.
Okay.
And I think that would be super helpful, since you're, we have this great visual of your studio. And while you do that, I'm going to answer a few questions. Joe, we are not going to see overhead and behind views today in the studio. Thank you for asking that question. But we will see Mitch doing some really cool drills, and he's going to use some really cool training aids this evening.
Did that work?
Yes, looks great.
Okay. So yeah, they're reacting to the club face. So again, typical move you'll see with a slicer, high handicapper, a weak left hand, or just poor wrist conditions. I'll see, we talk about wrist angles and set, that a golfer tries to get so much wrist hinge or radial deviation that they start to go into a cupped position. That leaves the face very open, getting ready to hit that golf ball. It's not going to take too many golfers very long to figure out, I got a short amount of time to square this face at that golf ball. So what you'll tend to see is a combination of things, the most common one with the higher handicappers with a very low driving average is, with the square club face coming down, they're going to keep the weight on the trail foot and then use the right hand to square the face. Not an efficient way to square the face, but it leaves a lot of pressure on that trail foot. Another common one that tends to happen with higher handicappers, but not typically as high, I've got the face open in a steep shaft position. So I've got to create a square club face, and my body's going to react to square the face and try to get it back on plane as much as possible to make contact with that ball. Because if I'm here with an open face and I turn and get into my lead foot and heel, I'm going to miss the golf ball.
Yep.
I'm going to miss it. So I'm going to react to get the club back on plane. So I will tend to create right side bend and push my pelvis forward. So now I've got the club on plane, face is still open. Then I'll add a lot of twist at impact. So I'll have a lot of backup and a lot of pressure in the lead toe.
Yep.
Because when I do that, I now have so much spine tilt to the right that I can't rotate the left side and get into the trail heel from there.
Yep. Okay.
So, when I'm looking at that golf swing, I see the trace going there. Now I'm looking to square the face. In one of two ways. Typically it's, adjusting the grip if necessary, and then improving wrist angles, trying to get the face as square as possible, maybe even slightly shut if the person's tired of slicing it. So what they'll tend to do is just hit rope hooks. You just hit hooks because they're used to delivering the club with a lot of right side bend or tilt with the pressure in the lead toe. The face twists and it goes left.
Right.
So that's where the pressure mat comes in. And assuming at this point we've got the face square, we got it slightly more on plane, but even the pressure itself will start to get the club tracking better. And that's where we'll start to be able to get the pressure into the lead foot. Because now if I have the face closed, I'm tired of hitting it left. I'm not going to hang back and flip the club. The face is closed. I'm tired of hitting it left. I'm going to hang on a little bit more and get my pressure in my lead foot.
Yep.
because I'm tired of hitting it that way. So, that's a reaction to the face. And then you use the mat and some drills I've got here to help, train. And the biofeedback of this is huge. Typically this is on the monitor or the TV in front of me, and you have that visual of the trace right here. So now that the face is square, the golfer that tends to keep the pressure on the back foot just to square the face, that's where we're driving into that front foot, trying to get that pressure a little bit more forward earlier.
Yeah, really cool to see those 3 examples, because, we've always talked about, okay, you just said, 2 issues to try to square that club face. And while you're standing on the mat, I'm watching the pressure way too much on the right foot. And then the second issue, way too much on the left toe. And then when you just did it the right way, it looked like pressure completely even on the lead foot, going through. I mean, that visual is really cool. Thank you for showing that. Okay. So you're looking at club face first, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then, so club face, you fixed it. The second thing you're looking at is the body.
I wouldn't even say the body, I would say more like the forces of the shaft, because let's say that golfer.
Or how the body reacts, maybe? Yeah.
So let's say if the golfer had the open face and did not want to hit it a mile right, they're going to try to square the face, hang back on the right foot and then throw the club over the plane. So that's going to that's an effort to get the face pointing at the targeted impact. So let's assume that golfer now has the face square, but still has this old delivery pattern of where the face and pressure are going. So now I'm looking at, okay, where's this shaft going? Where's the force going? Because when somebody's swinging this thing real hard, it could have up to 100 pounds of force. So that golfer that's too far in to out, the club stuck behind him and swinging to the right. If somebody took that and pulled it, well, then my pressure is going to go that way too.
Right.
So if I can get the force of the shaft feeling them pull it left for that golfer that's too in to out. So we're still keeping an eye on the pressure, but if I'm here and I don't want to whack this pull noodle, I'm going to start getting the club to work under the plane. And now we can see that pressure getting back into that trail heel without them necessarily having to think about footwork. Because, people learn in different ways. Some I put them on this mat and they can feel their footwork and that starts to shift their path. And then some have very low, awareness of where their feet are. So then we try to shift the club and that alters their pressure.
Yep.
So in this one, we're changing where the force of the club goes, and that's altering their pressure. Same with the over-the-top golfer. If this force, if they're used to throwing it over the plane, well, their trail foot, the pressure is going to shoot into their trail toe. So if I'm here and I get to the top, and this has been my move to internally rotate that shoulder and then the club starts to tip over, well, then if that force of that club is going that way, well, then the force on my right foot is going to move to the right toe. And it's very hard when that trail hip gets in to deliver that club from the inside unless I have some sort of early extension.
Right.
So if I can get the mass moving behind them, that actually will pull some of the pressure into that trail heel.
So awesome. You guys, I just want to tell everyone that's watching, we've got a couple hundred people watching. Thanks guys for tuning in. On Mitch's screen, you will see he is interacting live with the pressure mat. So if you've never seen that graph, just in case nobody knows, Mitch, step on it one more time. Okay, so on the right, that's Mitch's right foot, and on the left is his left foot. In the boxes, you're going to see pressure move. So the top of is his toes, the bottom is his heels. I think this is a really cool visual because as you're showing the swing faults, we can clearly see how that's affecting pressure. And then when you're just, taking like practice swings, we are seeing what's supposed to happen. So this is a really cool visual. I just want to make sure everyone understands this graph. As far as the graphs that pressure instructors use, this is 98% of them use this graph because of course the red is the most pressure and it really means a lot to instructors. Do you ever use the other graphs, Mitch, speaking of?
Not as much. I mean, I will, when I'm looking at peak velocity, when does the pressure shift? But
Right.
I mean, this is probably 98%, but I mean, I will some. The one I've got, his peak velocity went way up when we got his pressure moving at a different time. So,
Right. Cool.
yeah, I will.
Awesome. All right. So we talked about how the body reacts to, or how the body tries to fix the club face, and then how the body reacts to the club. What about different bodies or body types or body ailments?
Yeah. So, again, a common one that you would think your trail shoulder rotation, how does that influence pressure? How does my shoulder have anything to do with what my feet are doing? But when you're looking at, trail shoulder rotation, or you'll see, tour average gets up to like 120 of external rotation. So when they are delivering the club, they're able to externally rotate that shoulder and shallow the shaft. Well, that one sends the pressure, or the center of mass of the club behind me. So I'm forced to rotate, and you'll see that golfer get into their left heel, pushing that way. But if I have very limited shoulder mobility, well, then I'm left with a shaft that I can't really, I can't externally rotate it to shallow the shaft. So I'll use the feet a lot to shallow the shaft or get it coming down on plane. So typically you'll see that golfer walk in that his hands are internally rotated and his shoulders are rounded. You can already tell that golfer is going to have a really hard time, skipping the rock or throwing the sidearm pitch.
Right.
So what you'll do there is you have to find creative ways to get the club to come down more on plane. Again, assuming the face is square. So with that one, let me get the mat better. So with that one, that golfer that's going to have a little bit more of the flying elbow or have a harder time, have a steeper shaft, they're generally going to need more pressure in the trail heel so that they can open up the right side and gain a little bit more extension of that trail hip. So even if the shaft comes down vertical, it's still being delivered on plane, versus, the one that's able to rotate that shoulder back and get the center mass behind them. They're going to want a little bit more turn so that the club kicks back out on plane. So knowing how their right shoulder or their trail shoulder moves and how that's going to affect the shaft gives me an idea of what I need to do with their footwork to get the club to come down on plane.
Awesome. That is a great explanation. Thank you. Hey, do you mind answering a really great question at this point?
Sure.
I think it kind of goes, it's from your buddy, Scott. Scott Shelley was your buddy, right?
Aaron McDowell.
Ah, okay. Scott, well, Scott might be your buddy after this great question. Okay. What is the best way or ways to train the concept of weight and pressure increasing during the downswing from trail side to lead side without moving one's entire body to the lead side? Let me elaborate. In other words, how do you train someone to shift weight or pressure to the lead side without losing the head behind the ball until after impact? He says it's very difficult not to shift his entire body forward as opposed to just proper lower body shift to the lead side, which I know is critical. Let me know if you want me to read that again.
Yeah, I think I got it. I think there's a confusion between pressure and shifting mass, because pressure is a vertical force in the ground, where mass would be moving your entire mass. So, the old days in reading books was you have to shift your weight. Shifting weight, makes you think of shifting my mass. Typically, what you'll see if my whole body is shifting to the left side too early, or excuse me, if my entire mass is shifting left, it tends to happen because of the pressure actually shifted towards that lead side too late in the golf swing. So if I have pressure in the trail foot, and I then wait, then everything is going to go with it. But if you watch a baseball and a pitcher, they're pushing off of the mound while their upper body's still going back. So if I could push into the lead foot earlier, then that will keep my right side, or my tilt to the right, longer as I push it forward earlier. If I wait till I get to the top, that's where you start to see some reverse spine tilt and the water starts to dump out of the left ear. Hopefully that answered that question, but really understanding that the difference in pressure versus weight shift and mass shift.
So I think we can show that, Mitch. Stand on your mat. And I, we talk about this, just watching Mitch sort of set up to his ball. You see that line and he's moving pressure. He's not moving his body at all, but I'm looking at that line and I'm seeing pressure go back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. So I think that's a little bit about what you're talking about, right? You can move pressure without moving the body. I mean, we can see it. We're watching. I mean, he's not moving now, but two different things. Center of mass is moving the body, but pressure is totally different.
Right.
So Austin has a really good question as well. I'm going to do a quick screen share. In an ideal swing on the pressure mat chart, what should the numbers be for each foot throughout the golf swing? Okay, I'm going to do a quick screen share because I actually have a pressure mat deck. Oh, shoot. I can't do a screen share because you're doing a screen share. Austin, I have a pressure mat PowerPoint that I'm happy to share. And it has the address, transition, and impact, and the appropriate per Terry Hashimoto pressure transition. So I'm happy to send that to you. Send me an email. But at address, we say 55% on the lead, 45% on the trail foot.
Yeah.
And then at impact, 80% on the lead and 20% on the trail. Would you agree with that, Mitch?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of hard to be that definitive with the answer for multiple reasons. I mean, we got to take in consideration what club, what the golfer's trying to do to the ball, what their delivery position looks like. So, I mean, it needs to, all of it needs to match up. But yeah, I would say in that range would be absolutely correct.
Cool. And yeah, I agree. That's definitely just a range, golfer. I mean, a 14-year-old tiny girl may be very different than a long driver. Okay, one more question, and then we'll move on to looking at some of your before and afters. Scott Shelley also asked, in your opinion, generally speaking, what is more important to fix first, face angle or club path?
Face. I think absolutely face. I think golfers deliver the club based on where the face is. Because if I have the club face and I'm over the top, I'm not going to keep hitting it left, especially if I'm learning the game this way. I'm going to find a way to feel that thing move out to the right. So I would definitely say club face over path, because, you see this all over magazines and golf channel that we're all talking about getting the club on plane. But in my opinion, until, the last couple of years, we've got more into wrist angles, we're all trying to get the club to swing to the right without an awareness of where the face is. And we're going to, as golf instructors, we're going to, empty our bank account if we keep sending path out to the right without knowing where the face is. So I would definitely say face over path.
Okay, cool. Good answer. I like it. I'm going to get to these other questions in a minute, but I would love to, and thank you, Eon and Brian, for asking questions. I would love to see some of your videos. Do you have a video to share with us?
Yeah, I've got a player that did a little bit of what we'd already talked about. So I've got three videos of them. This was all in one lesson too. Get them pulled up here. Okay. Probably help. There we go. All right. So this is a college golfer. He's in his fifth year, his COVID fifth year, I guess you'd call it now. And he's the number one guy on the golf team. His name's Michael, and he can absolutely flat move it. So he came to me, and he and his coach were actually here too during this session. You'll see him there in the background. But he was hitting pull cuts. I mean, he kind of thrived on that when pressure got on. He was hitting this pull cut, but it wouldn't hold up in pressure situations. He'd get a left to right wind, and he was horrified, or you got trouble right, and it was two-way miss here. So we worked on trying to get his path more into out, and he had high swing speeds, but his delivery of the club was so inefficient that he wasn't getting the most out of it. So what we'll see here He does get into his trail foot pretty early in the backswing, which is common. A late wrist hinger. So he's got two things right here. They're going to cause his golf swing to get a little long. One is he's a late wrist hinger. When you see late wrist hinge, that generally means it's going to happen later in the golf swing. And then his pressure for what we were doing would stay in his trail foot too long. So at that point, I would like to see that going a little bit more forward. He's waiting until he starts his downswing before he starts shifting towards the target. Well, that's going to do is give his arms more time to move behind his right side. So he's hitting an 8-iron with that long of a golf swing. And then from here, we're actually going to see that white dot start moving opposite the target. So it's moving back into his right foot as the club's actually going towards the target. You don't want your quarterbacks throwing off their back foot. So he's got to stall his lower body and wait for his arms to fall back down the hitting zone. And you'll see this chase move right through impact. So that's his weight trying to go back into his right foot.
Yep.
He's 73% in his trail foot of that right foot while the club's going that way. And you'll see that kind of chase move. Look, his left foot's nearly off the ground. And then he'll finish his swing. So all that we're doing is sending his path left. And he had this long backswing. He couldn't control the face, especially when his pressure was moving opposite the target through impact. So I've got, this is just a drill swing we did. And you see we cleaned it up a lot, but we've only got about half the swing in. So his feel was, and you can actually see that pressure board, that Sheffick pressure board behind him. We did a lot of work with it. That we had him when he felt that he would push into the right foot, but as soon as we got left arm parallel to the ground, I wanted him to feel as if he's going into that left toe. So as that club gets back into his right or left arm into parallel to the ground is when he would feel that push into the left toe. So it's happening.
There we go.
Sooner.
Look at that.
Yeah. So now he's getting 96. And one thing we talked about is how we wanted to get his lead hip over his lead ankle so that when he pushed off the ground, it went that direction. If we look at the before here, his hips are pretty far to the right. So when he got to the top of his backswing, he never would get that lead hip over the lead ankle. So when he pushed off the ground, he's going to push the direction that hip's going. So, the ground force reactions are going to push back in the opposite direction. So it's pushing away from his target. So in that drill, we got his lead hip over the lead ankle, pushing it left arm parallel to the ground. So he could still push hard off the ground, but he wasn't going to push back now. He's going to push up. And
so good. Show that one more time. You guys, that is such a big note. And I've seen, now Mitch is the second person to talk about it. Power by having the alignment of the hip over the knee, over the foot creates more power than if your knee is all wacky. Can you show that? This face on video is so good. Can you show the before and after real quick one more time? Oh, so good. You guys, look at this. Everyone, look at the difference there. I mean, it's huge. There's no way that the video on the right can get more power than the left because of that misalignment. So it's such a good visual. Thank you, Mitch.
Yeah. Well, here's his after. So this was the after when he started hitting the ball.
All right.
He was getting an 8-iron up to 185 yards.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So I'll pull the video up first, and then we'll look at the pressure. So I got him to push back in his foot. In the swing that we looked at was Rory McIlroy. Kind of has that late hip turn where he's actually turning more to the right, but it's just his pressure's moving forward earlier in the golf swing.
Yep.
So we see that hip move forward, but in his mind, it was pressure in the foot. It wasn't actually trying to just move mass. So he would get the hip more forward.
There it is.
Left arm parallel to the ground, and he is max pressure under lead foot at left arm parallel. And this is where I'll look at the graph. So this is before. We'll go lead arm parallel to the ground and downswing. So we're at 73, and it's about to back up.
Yep.
But here we're already forward. So we look at his peak velocity went from 149 to 266. So
okay, that is a huge. Wait, we got to talk about that real quick one time. So this is the velocity chart, folks. All my instructors that are using the mat. Hey, Art Mafi, I see you over there. Hey, Daniel Silva, my buddies. So this velocity chart is showing us the peak velocity. On the left, when he's got that wacky knee misalignment, the peak velocity was 149 versus 266 after Mitch worked on that drill. I love it. So good. So good.
Yeah, so we got, now he can push off the ground as hard as he wants because he's got the hip lined up. And he actually got to where he would straighten both legs because now he's got his, knees, ankles, and hips lined where he's driving off both legs, same as somebody shooting a jump shot. You'd want them lined up.
That's great. So what kind of conversation did you have with that student and the coach? They were blown away.
Yeah, that's the coach sitting right there. And, he and I communicate so well because he's, so invested in his players and understands their golf games, probably more than their golf swings, which is I appreciate, is he knows, how they play golf, what shots they see, what shots they don't want to see. And so that was our big issue. And that's why I love that information from the player and coach, is this wasn't just trying to optimize numbers for some reason. It was trying to get a certain ball flight to fit his game, or in another ball flight to leave his game, so that we can, feel the ball turn over under pressure, but in reality just hit a straighter shot and cut down on excessive face rotation, by using the ground a little differently.
So good. How long ago was that?
That one was this past, looks like
December, beginning
4th.
of December.
Yeah.
And is he still working on that drill?
Yeah.
Cool. Daniel, I see your question over there about parameters. I've got a pressure mat deck that has parameter basics. I'd be happy to email that to you. Send me an email and remind me. And Daniel's got another question. He's my buddy. He's awesome. And he's asking, how can the mat help a player that has the hands too far back at impact?
Yeah, I can get to that. I think that kind of touches on, why are they doing that? I think you got to understand either they're trying to manipulate something with the face to square it. I mean, that's probably the most common one I see, is that when the face is misaligned somewhere in the golf swing, typically right through impact, you'll see the face open. That's the more common one, is an effort to square the club face. So that would be a big one. It would be, what are they trying to do with the face, and why are they doing it? And then once the face and path are a little bit more organized, that's when you use this as a huge training tool to get that to move forward. But looking at the face and knowing that that's their reason for having pressure in the right foot, that if I just purely looked at pressure without taking into consideration the face, and I'm working on trying to get the pressure to the lead foot without giving them a feel or correcting the club face, then the ball will actually go farther offline. You may move the contact or the bottom out point more forward, but the club face would actually be pointing more to the right.
Mm-hmm. Couple comments about the junior we just looked at. Did you ask him to widen his stance a little bit? There's a couple people that are saying that it looked like his stance is a little wider on the after. Did you also make that change? Just curious.
Yeah, we did. In my opinion, at least for that time, if we got a wider base, he could feel pressure moving more laterally, where when he was narrow, it was more rotational. So it was probably beyond what we would want in a full 8-iron, but it was at that swing, we were just, all right, I just want to see how far you can hit it. Like, let's just pound it and see what happens.
Well, right. And you made a breakthrough, right? I mean, you clearly made a breakthrough with velocity and made a point with the student. But really good catch, Anthony and David Jankowski. They both noticed that you widened the stance. So we've got some more questions I'm going to pepper in as we go from some of our buddies, but we have 15 minutes left, and you've got to show off some of the training aids that you're using.
Yeah.
Some of the training aids are so cool. Hey, do you ever take the mat outside?
I used to, when I was at Novadell, I was on the driving range with the bay door where I had access to it. Right now I've got to get in the golf cart and drive over the driving range. So I kind of look at this like, is my lab for in here. Foresight, I can kind of move a golfer and simulate most shots except for, obviously like downhill, uphill stuff, but
Right.
I keep it mostly inside.
Nice. So, Eon, thank you for tuning in. I know you're overseas. It's probably really late where you are, but he doesn't really take his mat outside, although I know you do. So we'll ask that question to our next host. Okay, show us the steering wheel.
Yeah, so how that applies to pressure. I took a steering wheel and I've got an alignment rod through it. But really to get into the visual of what the shaft does from backswing to downswing, and that trail shoulder, and trying to get it to externally rotate a little bit more, and then applying that to pressure. Let me get the pressure back up here. So your common golfer, for one that can't get the depth and the hip of that trail side, will tend to roll the golf club behind them because they're trying to get some depth in the club somehow. And they're going to do it by typically rolling the club inside. And so at that point, to get it to elevate, the wheel will start to turn left. So the center of mass of the club is starting to tip forward. Mm-hmm. And that's where you see the pressure get into the trail toes. And the club goes straight left.
Yep.
So this I use a lot for a visual of seeing that the rotation is going to create the depth in the club, not the rolling of the steering wheel or the rolling of the club. And then when I want to get the trail shoulder to rotate externally, I'm not going to pull the wheel behind me. I'm going to turn it to the right. The visual of the club tipping behind me, and you can see that yellow line. I'm trying to get it to match the plane line, which if I can get it on plane or under, now I'm free to turn as hard as I want. I'm actually forced to turn, because if I don't, the club's going to be sent way too far out to the right. So if I can get the wheel to turn, the trail shoulder to externally rotate, then I'm forced to rotate. And that's where you'll see that pressure start getting into the trail heel, because I'm working hard to get my lead heel. I'm working hard to get my lead side around so that I can get the club to come back through on plane. So I use this a lot in explaining and demonstrating, how the pronation or supination, whatever you want to call it, and that external rotation can get the shaft to work on plane and then free you up to be able to turn as hard as you want.
I love it. It's a great visual. It creates a really great, that is very cool. Pay attention, golf coaches. That's a homemade training aid that everybody should have. I love it. Very cool.
Yeah.
Can you show that band aid that you were talking, that's another one. I'm going to ask you another couple questions too. We've got a ton of questions. Yeah. Would you say that the more the pressure hangs back at P6 to P7, the more likely the player is to flip the face?
Yes, but it's chicken or the egg. Are they hanging back because they need to flip the face, or are they flipping the face because they're hanging back? So I think, trying to diagnose that and figuring out which is the cause and which is the effect is important there.
Yeah. Okay. So you guys, I know everyone loves drills. I know everyone loves training aids, especially with the mat. I always do tests with the hosts, and Mitch showed me this one. I thought it was cool.
Yeah. So, especially juniors, small golfers and girls, I want them getting in that lead toe because that's the jumper. And if I can get them in the lead toe and train that vertical force to go up as hard as we can, then we can pump the numbers up and hit the ball higher too. I had a golfer that was transitioned from high school to college, and he hit the ball really short, very, very accurate. But, we're going from high school golf in our area to D1 college golf. We got to pump his numbers up, and we worked on trying to drive out of the lead toe without early extending, to be able to push away from the target. So I got the FMT band from TPI, and you still see me on there?
Yep, you're good.
Okay.
I can see you.
So now it's pulling him towards the wall. So he's having to work harder to keep his pelvis back. So we would do a lot of the turn back, and then we would drive into the lead side. We're not setting into the heel, because if all we did was just set in the heel and turn up, he could get it done, but he's not creating any vertical force to push off with. Because the heel is going to turn, the toe we want to jump. So what we would do is have him push hard into the lead toe and then jump as high and as hard as he could from that toe and try to move away from the wall so that he's using the ground, pushing away from it, which is what you're seeing Kyle Berkshire and all these long drive guys do, is they're coming off the ground, but they're moving away from the ball because they're pushing the opposite direction. So with this drill, we got him really trying to feel how he would feel the ground and use the ground, not just to turn, but to create rotation and vertical forces and push up off the ground. So by the time we got up here, we could see that, on video and even on the mat, a lot of his swings, you'd see his lead heel come off the ground, kind of like a JT. And we were working, and we'd draw a line on his belt line, trying to get some pelvic lift in there, as he's swinging down to get his numbers up. So he went to college hitting an 8-iron about 135 to 140, and now he's hitting it 160, 165. So we were able to get those numbers up and help him make some more birdies by trying to get his footwork better.
I love it. And don't think that you were doing that drill by yourself, because my buddy Jim Altamirano literally was doing that with you. I promise you, he's obsessed, and he does drills and training aids with us live. And I promise you he's probably strapping into a device just like that to practice that as we speak. I love you, Jim. I know you're with me here tonight. Shout out. Okay. Brian Cairns has a good question that's timely. He asks, how much pushback or backup trace is allowable? Now, I know, I've had people say we can't jump, but Kyle Berkshire and a lot of juniors do to get power. So what do you think about pushback or backup trace? I guess that would be like a Z trace, but what do you think about that?
To me, the more the merrier with a younger person, because, especially if I'm looking at a junior, for one, they probably don't weigh that much. So as they get heavier, they're probably not going to back up as much because gravity is going to have a bigger effect on them. So if their foot's coming completely off the ground and it's at some point going to read 100% on their trail foot, then I'm all for it, because I want them to hit it as hard as they can, and then we kind of figure it out where it's going after that.
Cool. All right, let's see. You talked about the wrist hinge. How do you feel about the wrist hinge playing into this change in pressure? That must have been specifically about a specific video we looked at. Sorry, I digress. Okay. Can you talk a little bit? Sorry, we didn't. Jim says, yes, I am. See, I told you he's practicing that drill with us. Can you talk about, a little bit about the balance board? We talked about some of those things that you're doing with it, and I actually suggested you put them under the mat. But, let's talk about, for the folks that are, because this is such a great visual, what you use that board for, because I know you used it with the student that we saw.
Yeah, a lot of golfers just assume that the pressure shifts left when the club's going left or, to the lead side. But, when you're doing studies with this and you're watching not just golfers, but athletes. I mean, you watch tennis, the racket goes back, they're going forward. Training when that pressure happens. And I feel like too, that this kind of goes to that question about how do I keep my entire body from moving? Well, that's mass. This, if we can, focus the thoughts, is a downward motion. We're creating pressure vertically, not trying to move mass to the side, which is easy to do when you're on a seesaw. But starting with the lead foot down, and if you watch a Jack Nicklaus or Henry Stenson, they're pushing pretty early. They're getting into that trail foot very early in the backswing. And the reason they're doing it is because they're going to start moving in this direction much earlier in the backswing. So I'll start with that down, pushing to the right foot to get the pressure going there. And again, the feel is when that left arm's about parallel to the ground, start moving forward. So that helps me. I'm actually completing my upper body rotation while moving forward. And that's where you can start really getting some of that disassociation. That kinematic sequence gets all thrown off when I wait until my downswing to start moving forward, well, now my chest and lower body are all going to go firing together.
Yep.
That's not athletic.
Seeing you do that makes a great visual. I mean, just watching you do the two different movements, we can see that in your body. God, it's so good. So my suggestion, and I don't know if you've ever done this, is to put the board under the pressure mat. And we did a seminar this time last year. We had hoped to do a bunch of them in-person seminars where we brought the mat to a club and we all messed around with it and played with it. While I was there, the Jake Therms and the Ryan Groves put those training aids under the mat. We were all playing around with the difference in our pressure traces with the mat on top of those things. We also put noodles underneath it, half a tennis ball. I know that you were talking about some things that you put under people's feet to get them off their toes. So, you know, really interesting, crazy things we do to get people doing the right stuff, but you can use the mat sitting on top of these training aids, which is a different thing than we've talked about before.
I'm definitely going to do that.
I know, isn't that fun? You'll have those students in there.
You always put it on top. I never thought to put it underneath it.
Yeah, because you can put the mat on any lie, and of course it's it's soft and it might make for a really interesting conversation. I'd love to hear your feedback after you do that with one of your students.
For sure.
Okay, so we only have a few more minutes. What advice do you have for us as we start the new golf season?
Hit it hard. Figure out what's going afterwards. My mind's always geared towards juniors, so I would say for the average golfer, fix the face first, and then work away from the face, because ultimately, this is the thing that's hitting the ball. The body's going to react, the club's going to react, and you're going to react however you need to get this pointing at the target. Some do it efficiently as they can, and some don't.
Yeah. Okay. Got it. So you are listed in V1 as an instructor, and people can send you their swings. So if anyone is looking for more information from Mitch, who is a teacher of the year and a best young teacher, please feel free to reach out to him through the V1 app or through his social media channels. If you're a golf instructor, I would highly suggest you follow Mitch. His content and what he's doing with juniors is absolutely to be mimicked. And I really appreciate your time tonight. Thank you so much for joining me. I'm reading tons of comments of how much people loved the information that we shared. So thanks everybody for the comments. And we really appreciate your time. I hope you'll come back.
Yeah, I'd love to.
I hope you'll come back, and I'd love to see the feedback from your students after you put the mat on top of some of the aids. I love your room because I love all those it's so clean and nice and organized, but it looks like a lot of fun.
My kids come in here and wreck it, but I try to clean it up as much as I can.
Well, it looks very orderly and neat. And we really appreciate you being here tonight. Thank you so much, Mitch. And everyone, tune in next week. We will be doing a Tuesday trace with the director of instruction from TPC out in Vegas. And then we will be hosting a live webinar the entire rest of the week in sync with the PGA show. So our team will be available all week. I would love to see you. Come chat with me, come visit me. And please let us know if there's any questions for Mitch. Mitch, you're awesome. Congratulations on Best Young Teacher. And thank you for sharing the amazing information that you shared with us tonight. I hope you have a wonderful Tuesday evening.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.